Hello, and welcome to the TrailManners podcast. I'm your host, Eric Manning, coming to you from the beautiful trails in Ogden, Utah, but connecting you to wherever trail, ultra, and mountain running takes us. We'll bring trail running to life with amazing athletes, discuss the latest topics, epic journeys, and get you stoked for your next trail adventure. We're sharing the moments that make life special, because even a rough day on the trail beats a good day indoors, and nothing beats time spent with good friends and great stories. Catch us here weekly for your dose of dirt, vert, and good vibes. So now it's time to top off your water, grab some cheese curds, and join us for this week's podcast, where we take you deep into the heart of our sport. It's go time. Hello and welcome to episode number 304 of the TrailManners podcast. Our guest today is Natalie Sheffield. The TrailManners podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at TrailManners. And don't forget to subscribe, review, and rate us on iTunes. If you're so inclined, TrailManners would really appreciate any contribution via our Patreon account at patreon.com/TrailManners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome back to the TrailManners podcast. This is episode number 304, and we've got a guest for you today that we're going to go in a few different directions, because we want to make this entertaining and educational, because that's how we like to do things here at the TrailManners podcast. So our guest today is, I would like to say, a longtime supporter of the TrailManners gang. We have Natalie Sheffield joining us today via Zoom. How are you, Natalie?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, and I'm super excited that you agreed to come on the podcast, because I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to have some good information for people, and you're inspiring to me anyway.
Thank you.
So I'm sure you'll be inspiring to a few other people out there as well. I mean, we've got about 4 or 5 listeners. I mean, since you're on the show, I don't know if I can count you as a listener or not, so maybe we're down a couple. I don't know.
Yeah, I kept trying to downplay this in my head. I was like, oh, it's just going to be me and Eric talking. But no, not really. There's going to be a lot of listeners on this podcast. So yeah, I've been a long time fan. And before we go any further, I have to say, this is my Grammy award right here. Ever since I moved to Salt Lake City and started listening to TrailManners podcast, I was like, I've always wanted to be on. I was like, if I ever get on a podcast, this is the one I want to be on. Like this, I know I will have made it in life once I'm on here. And I've waited patiently, and here I am.
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing, and I don't even know what to say, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. We're just super happy to have you, for sure. So let's get into that a little bit. I mean, I'll introduce you, and then we'll get to that part in a little bit. But you are the owner / fitness / strength / running coach for Three Peaks Training. It's, as I said, you're the owner, so you're the one that got that going. I'm going to say, tell us a little bit about it, because we're going to address it on the back end, but give people a little bit of understanding. Like, what is it that Three Peaks and Natalie Sheffield do?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's constantly evolving. I started Three Peaks Training going on 2 years. This has been a dream in the making since I was 21. So let's say 15 years I've been trying to solve this puzzle of what kind of coach I want to be, if I want to be a coach, how I want to coach, all those things. And I've dipped my toes in all areas of coaching, and something 2 years ago, and we can go into that later, but clicked. And I want more runners to strength train. I want more runners to feel good. I think it's the missing puzzle piece in a lot of people's training. So I'm here to push strength training for trail runners and runners in general. Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's awesome, because people that listen to the show in the past know the my ex my co-host Joel Hatch is a strength trainer, right? And so, and he still is, and a big advocate for it. And obviously, with the show, that's partly what we want to do is help runners out there. And I use the word help all the time loosely because everybody, has their own thing. But that's a reason why we wanted you on the podcast, but not the only reason. So, and we'll get into that too. But let's just start off down the road. So you were an early TrailManners listener. Do you remember when you how did you find the TrailManners podcast?
Oh, well, I worked from home for 7 years and I'm a podcast junkie. So, and being on all kinds of like the Wasatch Wranglers side, I mean, I followed a lot of pages on Instagram and Facebook, and that's how I found you guys. So I was there when you guys came on. There wasn't a whole lot of podcasts for trail runners.
Yeah.
You were kind of one of the founders of it. Now there's a million.
1.2 million, I believe.
1.2. But yeah, so you guys really inspired me, helped me like work through all the errors that I made when I first got into trail running, because I wasn't always into trail running. I just to give you a little bit of background, I grew up and lived in Texas. I was born and raised in Texas, lived there till I was 26.
What part of Texas? I got to ask.
You got to ask. Well, I was Franklin, Texas. You probably never heard of the little town, population 1,500. I think it's still 1,500. It hasn't grown. Do you know where College Station, Texas is?
I
Texas
do.
A&M University. Okay.
Yes.
It is 40 minutes like north of College Station.
Okay.
So little bitty town.
Okay.
So I graduated high school and then I moved to the big city of San Antonio.
Okay.
I got into running when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And I got to thinking yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, it was trail running because I started on a dirt road by my house. So a family friend introduced us to, she trained for 5Ks and my mom got into it. And then I was like, okay, I'll go start walking. We drove 1.5 miles down the dirt road, drove it back, we marked it. That's how I got into running.
All right. Old school.
Old school. This was back when I had to mail in checks to enter 5K.
I was just talking about that on a podcast not too long ago, actually.
Yeah. Oh, the paper applications. Those were the days, right? That was way before Ultra Sign Up, my friend. So those were the good old days. So I basically kind of started doing it on my own. Like most high schoolers were out partying and getting into trouble. I was out training for 5Ks. I never ran track in high school. I was not interested in like team sports. I just wanted to do something on my own and kind of be responsible for that outcome. So yeah,
that's pretty good at a young age.
It is. It actually changed my life. Like I had a lot of anxiety problems, growing up as a teenager, all that kind of comes out and that calmed it. So that's kind of how it blossomed. And now so I was into running for a while. I graduated high school. I got into cycling. So I kind of put running in the back burner and got into more cycling. Then I got back into road running, ran some half marathons and decided to do a marathon. I was like, it's time. I mean, I've been training for probably about 9 years of running before I did my first marathon.
Wow.
So I had a good base. Let's say
that's a good base. That's a really good base.
That's a really good base. But it was the worst marathon of my life. Let me tell you, like, I didn't eat enough. I just ate the goose the whole time and I bunked. I mean, in mile 13, I felt like death. Like, it scared me. I was shaking. I was like, I had to basically like walk the last 10 miles in, but I made it. And I swore I would never run another marathon. Like, never again would I do that. So after that, I moved from 26 years old. I moved to Colorado, and that's where I flourished as like an athlete and grew into the person that I wanted to be. I got into triathlon then, so I completed 2 half Ironmans and eventually a full Ironman.
Right on.
Yeah, that was a big adventure. That was a big undertaking. That was like my life dream. Ironman was my life dream. I was always wanted to do it. That
was your first life dream, right? Because your second was being on the podcast. So
Yeah. There we go. Forgot about that.
Come on now.
I have a lot of life choices. So, I did the Ironman. It changed my life completely. I was on a training ride, probably mid part of the training for that. It was about 8 to 9 months of training. And this guy, I told him, he's like, oh, what are you training for? I told him what I was training for. He's like, has your life changed yet? And I was like, not yet. And he looked at me like, you just wait. So it did change. A lot happened. I went through a divorce.
Okay.
So there was something about training for that big of an event that just gave me confidence. It made me really be the person that I wanted to be. I was on my bike a lot, so I did a lot of soul searching. After I don't know how I did all that and complete that race, but I did. I always say, if you want something bad enough, there's never anything that's going to get in the way. But I don't know how I got through that training, but I did, with the circumstances that I was in. But that completely changed my life and the trajectory of my life. So after that, I was in Colorado for 4 years. I needed a fresh start, so I decided to move to Salt Lake City. Wow. And that's where I've been for almost 5 years.
Oh, so you haven't been here too long then, huh?
Nope. So right when I moved, I think, was it 2016, September 2016, I moved here. And so you all started the podcast not too long after that, right?
We started in 2015 on Thanksgiving, basically, of 2015.
So it was a little bit before. So I started listening to your podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like all these, like, Salt Lake City is so unique because the amount of elite athletes in my eyes in one small place is like, I've never lived anywhere like this before. It can be intimidating.
Yes.
I mean, as a newbie trail runner, it's very intimidating. And I was like, I see all these people on Instagram doing all these big runs and they're recovering. And I was like, oh, maybe there's a magic number. Maybe there's something magical in ultra running to where you just go run this certain mileage and you're just like, it's just magic, right? Well, no, that doesn't happen.
No.
It will chew you up and spit you out, right?
All the time.
All the time. And I'm still learning. So I got into trail running. I went on my first Wasatch Wranglers run by myself. This made me up, chewed me out. I was like, oh man, I can't keep up with these guys. They are way too fast. Like, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this on my own until I get my bearings with trail running, because everything I knew from road running did not carry.
Throw it out the window.
Trail running, like,
throw it out the window.
Throw it out the window. That's what I always tell people. You're starting over, basically. So I was really ambitious. I signed up for the Bryce Canyon 50K. And, I had the Ironman under my belt. I had did long days, but this was still something very new to my body. Being out in the sun and the trails for a long time, that's a whole different experience. So I trained really hard. I picked out this training plan online, and I was like, this seems like it builds up fast, but I mean, it seems like all these other runners are out doing this and they're okay, right? I mean, it built up 12, I think it was a 12-week ramp up to your first 50K, but I didn't read the small print.
Taper up.
I didn't read the small print, and that you should have a really good base doing that.
Yeah.
So I followed that plan. I crashed and burned. I burned out. Luckily, I didn't get injured. I was more mentally burnt out. My body was just not wanting to move anymore. Like, it didn't hurt. It's just, I was just fatigued and sluggish. So I was like, okay, what do I do? So I pulled back to the half, which was the best decision ever.
Yeah.
Because that Bryce Canyon, that race, that venue is hard.
Yes,
it's
it
hot. I mean, I about died on the half marathon, and I think the Lord that I didn't do the 50K because I was nowhere near ready for that. So I kind of I didn't have any more races after that. And that's kind of when I met Garth Harris, which you've had him on the podcast before. Awesome guy. And we started doing more like adventure runs. So no races, just long days out, on the trail, which made a huge difference. It gave me the confidence just being out there lollygagging all day long to say, okay, I can go and do a 50K if I'm just go out and have fun, right? It's just when you approach it as just a long day in the mountain versus, oh my God, I gotta get there in this amount of time, which sometimes you do because there's a time cap. It does take some of the pressure off. So we did later that fall, we did some of the Zion's Traverse. And that was 26 miles, I believe. I was like, okay, if I can do this, I can go do a 50K. So I signed up for the Fall Buffalo 50K.
Nice.
And that ended up a month later being my first 50K, which I was not following any structured training. I was just going out having fun. I was like, okay, what's the secret sauce to ultra training? Because I don't get it. I mean, I barely trained and went out and did a 50K, but when I trained hard to do it, I blew up, I didn't understand it. But so that's kind of how I got my toes into ultra running. And then since then I've done the Beaverhead 50K. I've done Orcas Island 50K, which freaking awesome race. Like I want to go back and do that one again one day. And then my most recent was the Squaw Peak 50.
Nice.
So that's kind of my, I guess, athlete resume per se.
Well, I think you can't leave out, like the Gib Wallace races and the Nordic Valley races.
Yeah, okay. You've got to bring some of those races back because those were, I feel horrible now. I know you're roasting me now.
Oh, I've just begun now. I've just begun now.
I was like, I knew I was going to make someone mad on this podcast, and it's you.
15 minutes in, and the host is already ready to go. But your saving grace, do you remember what was, did you run any races in Colorado, like a first trail race, short even, potentially even under 10 miles, around the 8-mile mark? What race was that?
I did. The Greenland?
Yes, it was. And the only reason I bring that up is because you ran the Greenland trail race in 2013. That was my first ultra.
Really?
The Greenland Trail 50K was my very first ultra in 2006.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. And I was thinking about this today because I remember you had some guys from, is it Palmer Lake?
Uh-huh.
They had a really cool trail running store there.
They sure did.
And I only went in there once, and I was more into triathlon, and I was like, this is the coolest store I've ever been into. And I was just like, I have to go back, but they closed it.
I know.
But they had something special there. And when you had those guys on that podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this store. And so I connected it all. And then I remember you talking about that Greenland trail, and I was like, I've ran that trail race before. So how cool is that?
Well, it's funny. So that podcast you're talking about from the Palmer Lake Divide Running Company, that's what they were called.
Yeah.
And I went out to visit my sister for Thanksgiving and drove up to the shop. And, of course, I'm an IPA guy. Well, these fellas in the store, they don't have IPA, so they pulled whiskey out. This is one of the 300 podcasts or more, right? Mm-hmm. This one will always stick out to me because these guys were giggling at me and I wasn't drinking the whiskey, right?
Yeah.
Next thing I know, it's 2 hours later and the bottle's gone. So I had 2 shows out of it. They put one over on me on that show. I will always remember those gentlemen with that podcast. But yeah, it was a great group and great people. But yeah, I just I do my social media stalking. I'm getting better at that again. That's what we do here on the podcast. And I noticed the Greenland Trail. I'm like, no way. I remember the 50K that broke me into ultra running. And did I still not like that race?
Your poor soul.
It took it out of me.
I did 8 miles of it, and that's such an interesting. It's like an open space area,
yeah.
I mean, it's super cool. When I first moved to Colorado, I was getting into hiking and a little bit of trail running, not too much of it, but I would always go out there and just find peace. Like it was just this. It was the oddest, remote, but close to the highway. But then there's this mountain in the middle, and there's this flat part. It's just odd, really cool place, though. I mean, that's pretty neat, though.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. And like I said, I mean, You really have been not just a listener of the show, but I know I speak for Joel here, how much we appreciate you supporting us, and not just by listening, but you came down to, the Nordic Valley 7K in the winter. You've come to our Gib Wallace races, and you've come to the Ogden Trail Running Festival when we'd have that, and have, some, in my opinion, some pretty cool guest speakers in town. Cat Bradley, Ricky Gates, Anna Frost. So, you've been around this show for a while. What? And I was going to ask you too, when you were listening to the podcast when it came on, did you learn anything?
I've learned so much
from the podcast or our guest. Did you ever learn anything? Do you remember anything at all from any of those shows?
Oh my gosh, you're really putting me on the spot.
Just
you're
one thing.
Just one thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I got a good one. You actually introduced me to cheese curds.
Oh, see, now you're my favorite.
I love cheese curds. I don't get to eat them all the time, but when I do, I love them.
So to me, it is the funniest thing in the world that that's what I'll go down, the day I pass. That's what I'll be known for, is cheese curds. Because every time I see people, they bring it up, and I have no problem whatsoever with it. But it is kind of funny because I've been mailed cheese curds. I've been gifted them at race entry. It's just funny. So it's funny you said that about the cheese curds. So,
and another thing, the beer. Like, I like the trial, love the beer. I'm a huge IPA fan, like huge. So I think it was Melvin's that I learned about from you. So every time I go up to the Teton, I stop at the Melvin's Brewery to have some brews, and they're so good.
Well, I've got a humdinger coming up in a couple days on the single track session.
All right.
It's right now, I would say this is my top 3 without a doubt. Mm-hmm. So you'll have to listen to that one. And it may or may not have been on before, but I'll let the listener decide to that. So trail running. Let me ask you. We're gonna get into it a little bit, but you've been in the trail running scene, and you've met a lot of people. I mean, because I know a lot of people through you that you've introduced to us, whether it's through the events or anything else. What keeps you? You've gone through these cycles, right, where you did some road stuff, you did the cycling, you did the triathlon. It seems like you've been doing the trail running now for a little bit longer. What's kept you in that area as opposed to, say, doing something different right now? Because what is it about trail running that keeps you coming back?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm constantly asking myself, wow, I've really stuck with this for a good little while. I've always been kind of a loner in sports. Triathlon is a very lonely sport. You're on your bike a lot. You're in the pool a lot. There's not a whole lot of conversating there. And even when I was younger, most people were out partying, and I was on the roads, and so I didn't have a lot of friends that were into the things that I were into. Mm-hmm. I did my fair share of partying, but so what keeps me coming back to is the community aspect of it. Like, I have my really good friend Lauren, her handle's Trail Running Teacher on Instagram. Like, her and I are like the glue that holds us and keeps us in trail running, because if we're having a bad day, I'll hit her up, let's go for a run. Or she inspires me to, I just signed up for Twisted Fork.
Yeah,
so I'm super excited about that, and so did she.
That's a good race.
Yeah, I'm super pumped about it. I've been wanting to do that one, but Squaw Peak got in the way one year, so it's kind of like a time where a bunch of other races are happening. So I dedicated this year to that. So I've kind of taken a little break from trail running because of my coaching business and running it again. But I was like, I just left my corporate career, so she kind of inspired me to get back into running, and that I can do both, because I can do both right now. But I love the community of it. I love that everybody just gets together and they support each other. It's just awesome. And you don't really get that with a lot of other sports. So I think that's one thing that's really unique to trail runners, that they really care about each other. They help each other on the trails. If anyone has any questions about gear or training, we're all there to help. So
nice.
That's the number one thing that keeps me coming back.
Well, that's good. And you you're so good at this podcast thing because you kind of help me
Really?
transition into the next one. So you
Okay.
mentioned it. You are a coach. Now,
I am.
I'm gonna hopefully get this in order correctly, but you talk about coaching. You've kind of dipped your toes in it, things like
Mhm.
that. What got you into coaching? Like, for example, I've talked to people before that I've seen, and there's coaches to me, and I know quite a few, especially in the running side. And I'm a soccer coach, which is kind of different, but people get in it for different reasons. Whatever you're coaching for, what
Mhm.
got you into coaching?
Well, it's kind of an interesting timeline. When I started training way back in the days where we had to send checks in to sign up for races, my friends would be like, "Hey," I would invite them out, and I would say, "Hey, let's go walk and run. Come run with me." And they're like, "Nat, you're so good at motivating people, and you should be a coach or a trainer." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not going to go there." So when I graduated high school, I did want to be a trainer. So one of my second jobs was at Gold's Gym, but it completely, that style of training turned me off. I didn't like the big box gyms. Some of the ethical stuff there that was going on was not good. So
Yeah.
I said I didn't want to be a part of this. So I got out of it. And I quit the gym. And then I got my first corporate job, which was at Citibank in San Antonio, Texas. I spent 5 years there. Um, Anything that ever came up about coaching, I wanted to do it, but I was like, I don't know. It didn't feel right then. So I spent 5 years at Citibank, left there, and then spent the next 10 years at the Hartford Insurance. So when I left Texas, I actually got to keep my insurance job. They're like, "Oh, you can work from home." And I was like, "Wow, this is great. I can just take my job with me. I don't
Yeah.
have to start over." So when I moved to Colorado, I ended up getting my personal training certificate. I coached one person. I was just like, I don't know. I just want to go out and just run by myself. I just didn't want to deal with the people aspect of it, but I
Yeah.
did. It was it's been a weird thing. So I guess one of the things that's really held me back this whole time from pursuing this is that I was so protected of my personal running journey that I didn't want anything to get in the way of that. I wanted to keep loving it. And I thought if I did it as a job, that I would hate it.
Yeah.
I was so afraid of that. Like, I've talked to a lot of people where they've turned their hobbies or their what they love into a job, and they're like, "Yeah, it's kind of becomes a job," and da 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 da. I was like, "Oh, I definitely don't want that." And it just didn't feel right. So moved. I just like squished that. I have the certificate. I was like, whatever. I'm just not going to use it. I'll keep climbing the corporate ladder because that's what we're supposed to do,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Kept climbing and climbing and climbing. Moved to Salt Lake. Been here 5 years. So basically, last 2 years, I'd climbed up. I was basically, the best way to describe it, I was an account manager. That wasn't my official title, but everybody kind of knows what account manager is. So I managed 35 agencies in the Northwest Territory that brought in they were uh, business insurance. So I worked in the business insurance,
Okay.
small commercial side. So I was their VIP liaison, I guess that's how you would say it. So they got rid of my position 2 years ago. So I was demoted, but not for performance reasons.
Yeah.
They just
Change
the
the
whole company,
format. Yep.
the company structure was changing. They were like, "Well, you're going back to customer service," and I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, me.
Like, my pay grade, like, I'm probably the highest paying customer service rep there was at the end, right? I was like, come on, guys, I don't want to, I did it, but so anyway, the whole thing kind of blew up for 2 years. I was like, there's just something that's pulling me out of this. I was like, I'm not meant for the corporate world anymore. And I don't think I ever was. So this was during the time that I decided to do Squat Peak 50. My personal life work life was just going to shambles. I decided to train for the 50, and I had just completed Orcas Island, and then I went into training for the 50 miler, and I got burned out. Not physically, just again mentally. So I kind of took a break from that, and I joined Wasatch Fitness Academy. And I went there for my first class, and that gym is dedicated to strength for endurance athletes. So I went that first class, and like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the kind of coaching that I've been looking for the last 15 odd years, right? I want to coach endurance athletes. That's what I wanted to do. And it just really opened my eyes. So I kind of like pondered on this idea, hadn't really told anybody about it, but I was like, wow, this is so cool. It inspired me. So I went down to the wedge with a group of runners, and I was running down there, and I was just like, where's my life going? I just didn't have any direction. I was like, I'm tired of playing it safe. I've played it safe for 15 years. I've never gone after anything that I've truly wanted to do career-wise. Like when I was younger, about to graduate, I wanted to go to a school in Colorado because I wanted to be an outdoor guide. I got scared. I was like, nope, they don't make enough money. I just like, I was like, how am I going to pay bills with that? I just got really scared. So I've always played it. I've always played my life like a chess game. I've moved it strategically to get where I want to go. But at this time, I climbed up in the corporate ladder, and I was like, well, what's next? You know, I'm not really doing anything career-wise meaningful. I've given up on all these dreams, and you know, throughout all my life because of fear. You know, I've always talked myself out of it, and I said, I'm done talking myself out of it. So I was sitting on a rock at the wedge, and I was like, I'm going for this. I'm going to do this. I want to be a coach, and I think I finally figured out what kind of coach I wanted to be. So I went home and I told Shannon, which is my partner, my wife, and she's like, Nat, this is great. This is you. You need to do this. I was like, okay. Well, don't get too excited now, because I was like, wait a minute. I've got this great job. Well, okay, on paper.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
making
stable.
great money. It's stable. I get to work from home.
Yep.
I get almost 2 months of paid time off.
Yep.
I get paid great. I'm like, on the outside, like anybody would kill to have this job right now, right? Because it gave me just such flexibility in my life as well. So I had this huge barrier to get over, and that barrier was me. I had so many mental things that I had to get over to pursue this. So got home, I kind of put some feelers out on Facebook to my running group, say, hey, would y'all be interested in, I was kind of doing market research, because I read that's what you kind of need to do when you have an idea and you want to open a business. So I got a big response, and I'm like, my gosh, how am I going to like host, if I have a class, if I do a class for strength for runners, how am I going to host or have room for 45 people? Like, I was like, okay, I don't have a gym. I reached out to some other people. I'm like, gosh, this isn't going to work. I don't know. The logistics of it was really difficult to work out. So put it down for like 2 months. I was like, I'm just going to let this set and I'll figure it out. So 2 months go by, and I practice Buddhism, and I go to this store. It's called the Dancing Cranes. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's down in Salt Lake City. They sell like incense and really cool like figurines. I don't know. It's just a really
They don't have
cool
cheese
store.
curds, so I probably haven't been there.
No, they get coffee and stuff like that. I love telling this story, but I'm always hesitant about telling the story because it's something that, okay, so I'll tell it. So I had $11 in my pocket that day, and I was going to go buy some incense. And every time I walk in there, I always see this psychic lady in there reading to people. And I'm like, I always am so intrigued by that. Like, I really want to go stay there, but I don't know. I'm just not that kind of, I don't kind of believe in that kind of stuff, right? But this particular day, something told me to go sit with her. So I had $11 in my pocket, and her sign said $11 for a reading. And I was like, what a coincidence. What a coincidence. So I sat down and I told her that I have this job, and I really love to train, but I don't know if I know enough to even be a trainer. I don't know if I even belong in this arena with all these other trainers that know so much more than I do. That's what I say. And she looks at me, she says a whole bunch of stuff, but she looks at me, she says, Natalie, no one's going to come to you because of what you know, because you know stuff. They're going to come to you because of your heart. And I was just like, oh, that just took me back. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Because a lot of people, when they do tell me, I love being around you because your heart and you care and all that. So anyway, she's like, this is something you need to do. And she gave me like this little sachet of readings. I mean, it just like, it spoke to me. And I went home and I made business cards after that. I made business cards and said, to hell with it. I don't have a gym, but I'm going to make a gym in my garage. If I'm going to, I don't want to work under anyone else because I went through all that. I thought I wanted to. I was like, no, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail on my time and my dime, and I'm going to be in control of it. So I opened up my own gym. I started bringing friends in. I got business from friends of friends. And so that's kind of how the story went. But so I opened this gym. So I still have my full-time job. So, and it doesn't get any easier. I still have these questions. Do I want to own a business? Because it's hard. Owning a business is hard. Do I want to give up this cush life for this struggle, right? Because it is a struggle. Being a creative person, putting content out there, being vulnerable, that's a tough arena to be in. You know it.
Amen to that.
Amen to that. It is tough. It is not for the weak of heart. So I spent a year and a half exploring these things, trying to find answers. I wanted to answer to fall out of the sky, say, quit your job. But it didn't. It would never. It never happened. There was never anything telling me. I mean, there was a lot of things. It was just me getting in the way of it. So I ended up 3 months ago getting on a pilot at work. They were like, Nat, we moved you back to the customer service, but we're going to put you on a pilot for a minute. That pilot, it was okay, but it turned out to be a job that they created and they wanted me to apply for it. And it was actually a job that I always wanted within that company, which is ironic. I'm like, why now? This is not making it easy on me, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I apply for this? I mean, I was on vacation when I found out the job posted, and I'm like, wanted to cry. Like, I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want this. I didn't want it. Yeah. But okay, I decided I'm going to try, right? Because you just never know. COVID happened. I was like, I would be crazy to quit this job right now. Like, I would be dumb. So the job came up and I went to the interview. And of course, I can't half-ass anything. So I do a great job of the interview. And I'm just praying for, like, it took them a while to make the decision. And they were hiring about 25 for this new team, which is quite a lot. There was quite a few applicants. And the friend, my coworker that I was on the old team with, she didn't get it. I was like, well, she didn't get it. I'm not going to get it. So I was like, okay, here's my out. I'm not going to get the position. They called me. They said, now I want to offer you the position and I want to give you a nice raise too.
There's the money.
I'm like, and I had told myself, okay, if they offer me this annual amount, I'll go. And of course, it was the exact amount. Everything in my soul wanted to say, no, I can't. I appreciate it, but I can't. But I just said, yes, I just burned it. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Because I wanted to say no, and I was expecting them to tell me I didn't get the job, right? I wasn't expecting them to offer me the job.
Yeah.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Can't this get any more easier? This decision any easier. So they weren't gonna put me in training and I had to get certified because I was actually gonna be advising small business owners on what kind of coverage they wanted. So I had to be licensed. So I found out in December that I got the job, and I wasn't going to go into training until January 27th. So this is just recently. So I was like, okay, I got 3 months. I can do this. And I was like, I'll just get certified. You know, what's the harm in getting certified? If I don't like it, I can just quit, right? But that just doesn't settle with me correctly. So Christmas rolls around. I am actually programming a 6-week strength plan for hikers or backpackers for one of my good friends that has a backpacking company in Colorado. Uh-huh. So I gave myself this goal. Okay, before I start this training, I've got to get this backpacking program out. And something about doing that was just, it lit my fire. I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do that training. I don't want to do that job. And I had been I kept putting up milestones. Once I save up this amount of money, once I get here, I'll quit. I'll quit then. But it was always 6 months off, right? Well, I never quit. I mean, I would get that money saved. I would do this, but I could never do it. I said, I can't say no more of this 6 months stuff anymore. If I'm going to quit, I have to do it now, because I usually end up talking myself out of it. So 2 weeks before it's supposed to start this new job and this training, my boss pings me. She's like, hey, we're going to get you set up. I say, can I talk to you? And she says, yeah. So I was on pins and needles the whole day, like, oh my God. And the funny thing was that it was my best friend from Texas that I had to put my resignation in with.
So did you was there like an aha moment though? Was it the backpacker thing? Was there just this aha moment, this light bulb that kicked in that said, this is it?
It was definitely the backpacker thing. And the closer I got to that day I was going to have to go in the training. Mm-hmm. The thing was, is if I did this training, I don't think I was going to be a coach, because it was going to take a lot out of me. Yeah. Like I was going to be heads in the books, getting licensed, and then this new position was going to be a lot. So it was almost like an either. I was so tired of having my foot in both places. It was becoming unhealthy.
Yeah.
When you're torn, you're doing something you love, but you also are doing this other thing over here. It starts to wear on. Yeah. It starts to wear on your soul. Everything starts to get muddled in your head. You can't make good decisions anymore. I don't know. It was just becoming unhealthy. I was like, and I don't want to live my life like this anymore. I can't have 2 feet and I can't keep up with this. I might die. Yeah. Literally. So I had to make a decision. I was tired of playing it safe. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is wearing on me. I have to go with what's in my heart. So I put in the resignation with my friend. And even my friend, she was like, are you sure, Nat? Are you sure? I was like, I think so. And she's like, Nat. She even said, Nat, I've had people come back and want their job back, so you better be sure. And I'm like, oh God. And I wanted then to say, okay, I want to keep it. But I said, I just dug so deep and I pulled it out. I was like, no, I'm sure this is what I want.
Do you remember the day that you decided that you were going to be a full-time coach, that you threw everything into that? You put both feet and you said, this is where I'm planted. Do you remember the date on that?
It had to be 2 weeks before I put in my resignation. Like it was a matter of a day. Like even Shannon was like, because I kept getting to this point a lot. I mean, it was like, I think I'm going to quit. And something would come up. It's like having a baby. I don't have babies, but they said there's never a good time to have a baby. There's never a good time to quit a job either. I was trying to wait for the perfect sign, the perfect moment. I was even in therapy. I mean, I was like, please just give me. And I almost was like, I need to go back to that psychic because.
And she's gone.
Well, she is because it's COVID, you know. I was like, I'm gonna have to put on my big girl pants, and I don't think there's gonna be something full out of the sky that says this is gonna be the right decision, because this is a very scary decision. Like I'm giving up a ton, but I'm also gaining a ton. So. A lot of barriers to break through. I spent a year and a half with my feet in two places, and it was a wild ride. And finally, I just got to the point of I'm gonna have to make this decision. Like,
well, and this is like I said when I started the show about you being inspiring. I mean, this is a part why I wanted you on this podcast, because. Especially now, right? I mean, with the whole last year, with the pandemic and the uncertainty and the scariness of everything. I mean, you really went against the quote unquote norm. You had it safe. You had, you knew where you were going. You had the financial part of it. I mean, I was in the same boat. I worked from home before I'm at the job now. The financial part of it. I had those things as well, but you did something that I know for a fact people out there wish they could do. I've talked to so many people, and I've always been one of those people where I wish I would have maybe made a different decision at one point, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's pulling you in that direction. This is where I feel like I need to be. This is where I feel like I need to do. But it's a hard decision. And, there's
Oh,
so
it's
many
hard.
things that fall into place. I mean, you mentioned Shannon. It's so good, too, to have the support to help that because, most people are, you care about others, right? And so if
Oh
you don't,
yeah.
if the support's not there, if that person's telling you, no, you need to stick with this safe, responsible, work your way up the ladder. This is a great opportunity. I mean, that's a notch on that side to stay there because that's a big
Oh
part of your
yeah.
life. But when you have somebody that supports who you are, not the end game necessarily, but no, this is what I
Mm-hmm.
see you want, and like you said, it's your dime, your time. If you fall, if you fail, they're there, but
Yeah.
they also
Yeah.
don't ever bring those things up, right? It's always like, this is going to be
No.
awesome. You're going to be successful. Even if
Yeah.
I mean, they know those things, but, having your fear become a motivator, and because we have it, right? You mentioned it earlier, like whether you're running a race or training or any of these things, fear is such a weapon, right?
Oh
And it's
yeah.
either a good one or a negative one. And,
Mm-hmm.
people, myself included, I'm definitely in this category, but fear is such a driver. It's such a driver, but when we try to make that become a motivating factor in what we do, I mean, simplicity of it. The people I've talked to that are scared, right, fearful to run a 50K, a 50
Yeah.
miler, I mean, whatever that is, even first time trail run, I'm scared to get on the trails. I've been a road runner.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
so interesting how we can let those fears drive us to incredible happiness, right? And
Oh
I'll say
yeah.
success, and I think everybody needs to define their own version of success
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it is. But it is. I mean, when I was so happy. And I don't comment a lot of things on social media, but I remember when you did that, when I saw you say I'm full time, I was like, this is awesome. This is awesome because I knew, I mean, I've known you for a little while.
Yeah.
But it's just not an easy decision to do stuff like
Oh,
this, especially when you've
no.
got the safety net, which you had.
Yeah. It
So
is
I was
so
super
hard.
excited because to me it's such an awesome story that can translate into so
Mm-hmm.
many things: relationships, jobs, hobbies, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you still understand the magnitude of what you've done. I think it's not going to
No,
hit
I
you for a
don't.
long time. And I talked to you about getting into coaching, and earlier on in the podcast, you talked
Yeah.
about, helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see where you go with Three Peaks training. I'm excited to see, and
Yeah.
I've seen some of the stuff you post on your athletes. I'm excited to see what
Mm-hmm.
they do. But this is awesome. I'm happy to
I
have you
know.
on here.
I thank you so much. And as I worked through this fear process, you talk about fear, but I kept going back to, well, what if? What could happen? Like, I mean, is in a good way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this could grow into something so wonderful. Like all the opportunities that could. I would always say, well, this could happen. And then I would say, nope. But what if?
Mm-hmm.
What are the possibilities, right? So and two, another good point, we're talking about fear and things like that. Like sometimes you can't see what is gonna happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even like, it is so big in your head that you just can't fathom it. Like when I did the Ironman, I was like, this is stupid. This is a stupid amount of distance that I have to go. Like I could never, and I still can't to this day fathom that I did that. Like it doesn't feel real. And it was so hard, but I just said, look, you just gotta believe.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta believe, even though you can't see the finish or you can't even comprehend how you're gonna get there, you're gonna get there if you try hard. And amazing things happen. So you just have to believe in the unknown. You have to embrace the unknown because that's where like a lot of special things happen, right?
Well,
the unknown. And when you get there, I mean, it's amazing.
Well, and once you're fully vested, like you talked about, I mean, perfect example, having one foot in each side. Once you get both
Mm-hmm.
feet in there, that becomes your focus, right? And then
Yeah.
it's not so much your focus is in two areas. And I'm just talking obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Like a job, not with every other thing we got in our lives, but when you have
Right.
your feet in different things, now you can purely focus, and that's where I think the ideas, the creativity, the growth begins to happen. Because like you said, you don't see it, but once you're fully invested, fully into it, I think that's when you start seeing those things. I remember years and years, and when the wheel was made, when someone finally told me, you start visualizing it, right? When you get scared, when you get nervous, when you get on that back foot, visualize what you want to do. And I meant, it's like visualize the finish line, you will. And that would sometimes get me through that little bit of hesitation or that little bit of fear, because it's like, no matter what you do in life, you pay your dues. Whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whatever it is, you pay your dues as you go. But when you see that finish line of all those things, because that's your sole focus, those other distractions can slowly move away. So, so when I kept hearing you say these things, the direction, and it's safe, and I wasn't sure, and I had one foot here. It's such a reality of everything we do, and it's such a reality, and I'm spinning it back around here because that's what we do. But it's such a reality with trail running, and I've just loved meeting the people at races, or you did you had this on the show, or you had this guest, and this guest mentioned this, and now I'm on this journey. And that's like your story. And that's what I'm hoping with this story is there's people out there that need to have that $11 in their pocket right now, right?
Yes.
They need to hear this and say, hey, this is someone else just did this. Why can't I? And so to me, that's the biggest part of this, besides, winning your Grammy today, being on the podcast.
This is pretty big. This is big.
Man, after what you've gone through, this is nothing.
Award.
No, but I think it's awesome. Yeah. I think it's amazing, and you talked about it early on with training athletes, endurance athletes. It's such a critical piece to training. A lot of times, and people train at their own level, they train at their own pace, they have their own mindset. But I think having these, and the older I've got, the more I've learned. This strength training, the stretching, the yoga, the self-care is such critical pieces. And it's not just how many miles, how much time, how many days, those types of things. There's just so many things. So the more people can incorporate the strength training, the nutrition, the rest, all those things. So it's good to have, just like the podcast, there's a lot of coaches, right? There's a lot of, there's a lot of coaches out there. And we've had this conversation on our podcast so many times with the Ty Drainies and the Jeff Brownings and coaching, and they say the same thing. Interview your coach. Find the coach that's right for you. And when they say right for you, have that connection. Make sure that you connect on a personal level, and it's not just money changing hands with a spreadsheet. Because I see that a lot, and I've heard people talk about that a lot. So I encourage people, so you're at the @ the number 3 peaks _training on Instagram, and that's the best way to reach Natalie, or just at 3 Peaks Trainings on Facebook, and you can check things out there. So I'm going to ask you, kind of briefly, unfortunately here, but some strength training, right? If I'm a runner right now, we're getting there, right? We're almost to March. March is around the corner, so more and more races are popping up. Because we'd had Joel on the podcast. He talked a little bit about it. What are some recommendations you have to some of the listeners out there that want to do some strength training to help probably some injury prevention, but also just make them better runners? That's not like big blocks of like off-season training, maybe some maintenance type stuff. What are some ideas you have for people out there?
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad you touched on that. So it really is going to depend on what phase of training you are in as a runner. So we kind of we periodize our running plans, right? We have it in certain phases. We have the base building phase, the intensity, the specific, the taper. That also goes for strength training. So there's different phases of strength training, and you're going to pair that with whichever phase you are in running. So right now is in season, right?
Yeah.
So I have an off-season program, I have a pre-season program, and I have an in-season program. I wanted to design all my programs to fit into whatever block of training they're in, right? So right now is more in season. So you're going to be looking for more of unilateral work, stability work. If you're new to this, you're gonna have some strength gains, but your focus right now is kind of running. So you kind of gotta have a lighter focus in the gym, because if you overdo it in the gym when you're in training, you're not gonna have a great run, right?
Yep.
So we have to balance those things. So I would say I do a lot of air squats, box step ups, single leg deadlifts, anywhere in the ranges of like 8 to 12. I have a lot of my athletes right now doing muscular endurance work. So that muscular endurance is more of how many times the muscle can perform a movement before it fatigues out, right? Some of my favorite workouts are muscular endurance workouts. I mean, they're hard.
Yep.
So just to give you an idea of what those are, it usually starts around, I start them at 3 to 4 rounds of 10 air, and there's no breaks in between the exercises. So 10 air squats, 10 front lunges on each leg, go directly into 10, so 5 on each leg, alternating jump lunges, and then go into a total of 5 air squats. And you're going to take about a 2-minute break. So your legs are, I usually scream after each. Like, I'm like, got
a little burn going.
Legs. Yeah, got a little burn. But it's very effective. You do have to be very careful with it, because you can injure yourself. You don't want to go too much too soon on this. It trains the muscle, the endurance part of the muscle. So you just kind of want to place that strategically. So I usually place those at the beginning of the base building period. And then when they get into the specific, while I'm sending them up the mountain, that already translates over into the power of them going up the mountain.
So with your training, you mentioned you have a gym in your garage. Do you do plans for remote people that aren't in Salt Lake City? So you have plans that you can work with them too? Oh yeah, I do.
So right now, I have all my plans on a Word doc, which I'm converting them over to a really nice looking PDF. And I just got done taping all my demo exercises. So I'm going to have all the plans, either the in-season, off-season, preseason. You can purchase them all in a bundle. I'm going to have those ready probably in a month to purchase as a PDF, which is just going to be a one-time charge if you don't necessarily want coaching, because not everybody wants coaching.
They just need direction sometimes.
Yeah, they just need direction, especially on the strength part. Like, I think a lot of runners don't strength train because it's this confusing world, right? Like, what do you do? How do you... Because a lot of, like, if you just go print just a basic strength plan off the internet, is that really gonna go with your in season? Is it gonna take away from your running? Because you just gotta strategically place it in whatever phase. So that plan might not be suited for where you're at in your running.
Yeah.
So you gotta play around with it. But I want to change the mentality around it, right? There's just so many people that aren't doing it. And let's just talk about injury prevention right quick, right? When we're out doing these long runs, there could be a price to pay. You're putting so much stress on your body tissue. And when we're talking about body tissue as runners, the muscle, the bone, the ligaments and tendons, all of these have a capacity. When we go beyond that capacity, when we stress it beyond its current capacity, that's when we see injuries, right? So this is why I stress an off-season plan, because when we're in the off-season, we are building muscle capacity. So we're building the capacity muscle to withstand a lot of load without fatiguing. Our bone density is increasing, so you're getting less stress fractures. I see stress fractures a lot in ultra running. So you're building up your bone density, your tendons and ligaments, right? Your tendons connect the muscle to the bone. And it's through like a calcification. So when you're in the gym working under load, you're stressing it just a little bit. It is having this calcification process, and it's kind of connected even stronger to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
So you're having all these adaptations. So when you're ready to hit the ground running in your trail plan or your training plan, your capacity is big, right? It can handle it. You're not going to have, I can't say this is going to prevent every injury, but science backs that this is going to put injuries at bay, right? And you want to feel good. Like when I started strength training, I started feeling like I had muscles working that never, like my butt was working, my hamstrings were working, my quads were all working. So all those muscles were starting to work. So it could handle a lot of load, right? My stride started becoming more efficient because I was building those motor control skills. So, I mean, I felt more durable. I'm not as sore as I used to be anymore. Like I feel almost like bulletproof. Like everything is just feeling really good and strong. So I push for off-season work. When you start working with me, if it's in season, I'll put you in the in-season program course because it's better to start anywhere.
Somewhere.
You're gonna
you got to start somewhere,
right? You
yep.
got to start somewhere. But when you hit off-season, I'm gonna be like, look, we need to get your body prepared to take on the training load because you don't want to be playing catch-up next year, right?
Yep.
You don't. So you can have these adaptations through running. I always say you can have them through running, but it's not efficient. You're upping the miles. You're already putting that stress on there. So it's really hard to efficiently do that through running. And it's not, the impacts of running are really heavy. So that's why I stress strength training. The benefits are amazing. You're going to feel better. You're going to have way more fun on the trails. You're going to recover better. And hopefully my goal is to have all my runners have longevity in their trail running career, because we see a lot of runners come in and come out real quick because of injuries. I mean, I want to change. This is the change that I want to make. I want to influence strength training. I want more people strength training. Nice. I think it's really important.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And again, there's so many reasons why we wanted you on the show, but this is one of them. Was much fun and entertainment we like to have on the podcast. We definitely like to help people and have other people like yourself help people. There's just so many opportunities out there for people to become, quote unquote, better or improve, maybe is the right word, with what they do. Because the last thing we want is to have those people come in and out of the sport, because they come in the sport, they're great trail runners, and the next thing you know, they're riding bikes because, that's the next step.
Yeah. And I mean, running in general is just so impactful. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care ahead of time. Don't wait until you're on the couch with the stress fracture. You got to take care of these things. I mean, even though we see all these runners going out doing these amazing distances, it does come with a price if your body is not prepared to take on that kind of mountain.
Yep. Well, awesome. Well, this has been so good having you on the podcast because it is inspiring. It inspires me just as much as I know other people out there, and I could not, and I mean this, could not be more happy for you and Shannon. The journey you guys are on, plus the things you're doing, is absolutely incredible, and I just feel fortunate that I've had the opportunity to get to know you through the podcast, because obviously without that wouldn't have happened. So it's been fun for me to have you on. However, I can't let you go yet without something I'm excited to bring back that a lot of listeners enjoy, which is called the Lightning Round. So the Lightning Round is a select questions that I ask that you can't have a long answer for. It's got to be direct, and we're moving on.
Okay, quick.
So there's no time to think. You just watered up. This is probably the most important part of this entire podcast right now, so I'm not going to put any pressure on you.
Gosh, I'm sweating already.
The millions of listeners are ready, so
okay, let's do this.
I'm gonna ease you into it. Okay, I'm gonna ease you into it. So the first one: bucket list race or adventure run you still need or want to do.
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Nope. Which one?
Ooh, I want to go do Mount Blanc.
Okay, well
I want to circumference Mount Blanc.
There you go. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Finish this sentence. I cannot run without.
I cannot run without. Oh my gosh, there's so many things to run without. I cannot run without. Oh my gosh, now I'm like, cannot think of anything.
I eased you.
Food, because I can't run without food.
Okay. I run for food, so you can't run without it. I run for it. So. All right, they're going to get harder, so there's a few more.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm doing horrible.
Okay, follow this one. If you could pick one person to run some trails with and pick their brain or talk to, who would it be?
Anna Frost.
Ooh, I like it. I'll tell you, that is one fun brain. I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
When we had her in Studio 78, that was one of the funnest episodes. I wish we would have had the off-air stuff on air because that was good. What would the 12-year-old Natalie say to you today?
Oh my gosh. How like badass you are. Like, wow, you actually did it.
Nice. That's what I was hoping because I was going to come up with, she's proud of you.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. This is an easy one for you. Favorite exercise in a workout? You could pick one exercise in all your workouts, just one. What is your favorite go-to?
I love the glute med sweep.
That doesn't even sound. That sounds something like on a menu.
Yeah, that is like, I love that exercise right now. I mean, it's hard to explain. I'd have to like, maybe I could do like a video and like tag TrailManners.
There you go.
And then I could tell people what I'm talking. Glute med sweep.
Glute med sweep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'd order that. What's your favorite race distance and why?
I really love a 30K.
30K?
For me, I can go fast. I mean, it's right at my threshold. I can't maintain that speed after the 30K distance. So I like that distance because I can see how far I can push and how fast I can go.
Good. I like it. What have you learned from running?
Oh my gosh, what have I learned? I've learned to trust in the process, even though I have no idea how the process is going to work. I've learned to trust in the unknown, really.
Okay, good. I like that. What do you wish someone would have shared with you when you first started running?
Trust the process. So ease into it.
Yeah.
Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't look at other people's stuff and feel bad that you're not there yet. Run your own race.
Favorite aid station food?
Bacon.
Oh, man. Love it. Last thing you binge watched?
Intervention.
Intervention?
Intervention. Have you ever seen it?
No, but that's why I asked this question. Sometimes I'm looking for something.
Man. Yeah, go. It's on A&E. They follow like addicts and stuff.
Okay.
So, and they have intervention. So
awesome.
Go watch.
Awesome.
You'll be addicted.
Here's your last question. You've done well, but here's your last question. This is going to, you don't have time to think. This has got to be what comes to your brain right out of the gate.
Okay.
Who's been your favorite guest on the TrailManners podcast?
Anna Frost.
Anna Frost. We're back to Anna.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That's
yeah.
good. Well, Natalie, I seriously want to thank you so much for coming on the show and agreeing to be on here. Like I said, I personally hope you understand how inspiring you are, how amazing you are, and I could only hope that at least one person, if this affects one person out there, to go after something that they have a little fear of or they have a little doubt with, that's all we care about, right? Just somebody out there, because the other side is so incredible. And I said, I'm proud, I'm honored to have you on the podcast, because I do know that this podcast will truly affect people out there because we've done them before. And I'm happy that it's you. I'm happy that it's you that's been able to do that, because like I said, you've been a follower of the podcast early on. You've been such a huge supporter of the show, and it's just awesome. It's so good to have you on here, and I truly appreciate it.
This has been so much fun. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
I'm gentle. I take it easy, and I told you you'll be fine.
You're really good at this. Yeah, you're really good at bringing that out of people, right? The conversations and the flow. One thing, if anyone needs help with anything, like if they have fear or they need help with strength training or running, anyway, I have a new email address. It's Natalie@3peakstraining.com. So you can reach me there. You can reach me on Instagram. We went over that earlier. And if I could leave one message, is don't ignore the tap on your shoulder.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, just so everybody's listening, if you're driving or whatever, don't worry about writing stuff down. We will actually have all the information she just said, her email, all that on the show notes. So it'll be right there on our website, so you can reach out to her. And I hope you do, because you won't regret it. I know that just from knowing Natalie. And again, thank you so much. Congratulations on everything. And I mean that, everything, personal, professional, everything. Congratulations. Thanks for being on the show, and just thanks for being you. We need more people like you out there for sure. So thanks for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
And thanks for listening to the TrailManners podcast. This is Eric and Natalie, and we are out. Thank you for listening to the TrailManners podcast. I'd like to thank Natalie Sheffield for taking the time to join us today. If you want more information for 3 Peaks Training, you could check it out at 3peaks_training on Instagram, or at 3peaks training on Facebook. That's the number 3 on those. I also want to encourage everybody to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at TrailManners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. There you can check out the store page and support the podcast by buying a shirt or whatever else we have in there. Or you can hit us up on the contact page, let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on the show. And besides, I always love hearing from you. And lastly, TrailManners would love your support via our Patreon account at patreon.com/TrailManners to keep us alive and kicking. Until next time, this is Eric Manning reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.